What did we learn from 2024? I'm Joseph. This is Input English. Let's get started. 2024 is coming to an end. Tomorrow is New Year's Eve, and then comes the new year. We've talked about looking to the future and what we're going to do in 2025, but what about looking back at 2024? How did that turn out for us? I've been thinking about that, and what I discovered is that 2024 was a pretty good year for us. One of the big influences on my 2024 was the development of this YouTube channel, because it occupied a good bit of the year. My wife and I took 2 trips early in the year, and one of them was halfway across the United States. We went to Texas to see the solar eclipse in totality. And that was a great trip. We also got together with family. When we returned to California, I set about the task of learning the craft of making videos, learning how to edit videos, and it was not easy. Building this channel has taught me a great deal. I could identify 3 really important things I learned from building this channel during 2024. The first one is learn it right, learn it once. So when I make videos, sometimes I need to do a little research to make sure what I'm saying and broadcasting on YouTube is actually accurate. And so I did a lot of research in the field of cognitive psychology, and I watched a lot of lectures by Robert Bjork on the subject of learning, forgetting, and remembering. And I've shared a lot of that information in previous videos. I think it's important because a lot of people have no idea how their brain works, and yet we're trying to use our brain every day. I found it very useful to understand how the brain works. What I learned from Professor Bjork's lectures is basically, if you learn it well, you learn it once. Now, we have a saying in American English, it's like riding a bicycle, you never forget. But you do. So I had not ridden a bicycle for a couple of decades, and then I decided years ago to use a bicycle for exercise. Logical. So I bought a bicycle, and I took it out to the bike path and got on it. And it was very uncomfortable, and I was very awkward for about a quarter mile. And then after about a quarter mile, I was an 11-year-old again. I was super comfortable on that bike. So the way I see that having unfolded is that I learned it very well when I was young. I lost the retrieval strength. That is, I lost current familiarity with it because I hadn't touched a bicycle in more than 20 years. And then what I observed is it took an incredibly short amount of time to get my retrieval strength back, to get comfortable on the bike. In fact, it was so fast, you would say I never forgot anything. But I'll tell you, that first quarter mile was frightening. In language learning, if you try to memorize things and you do lists and memorize things, you're not learning it well. And then you're not going to remember it. What we learned from Professor Bjork's work is that the strength of our memory for new learned material is related to the number of connections that the new information has with what we already know, with our life experiences and other facts we already have. He points out that for our purposes, the capacity for a human to learn new things is infinite. We don't see people learn so much that they have no additional capacity and they have to stop learning. That's not reported. Doesn't happen. So to pull all these thoughts together, if I'm learning language with comprehensible input and words, phrases, sounds, rhythms, all the parts of the language are given to me multiple times through input, and I learn that very well, then I'm not going to forget it. I'm always going to have it, but it may be a little bit hard to retrieve if I get rusty. Now, that's an American English expression, if you get rusty, and it really applies here. If you have a skill and you haven't done it in a long time, we would say you are rusty. But it doesn't take very long to get back to where you were. I have not played golf in about 15 years, but I'm confident if I chose to go play golf, I could go out to a practice range and in short order could get back substantially where I was. Even though I'm rusty, I don't have to start over from zero. So I learned in 2024, learn it well, learn it once. The second thing I learned is that we are building bridges. This channel was designed actually as a bridge. The common concern among English learners is as follows. They've studied English, they have a pretty good vocabulary, they have trouble understanding native content, and they have trouble speaking. So if somebody has trouble with native content, then it makes it impractical for them to use native content to improve their English. So the reason this channel exists is to make content for people who want to eventually use native content as their comprehensible input. I had that goal in Spanish. I wanted to be able to consume native content as input. And with enough input from language learning sources, like Dreaming Spanish and some podcasts, I was able to get to a level to where native content makes sense. So this channel exists as a bridge so that you can improve your level of English and then move on to native content. It's also a bridge in another sense, and that is it connects people. I was a little surprised that my favorite part of this channel is the comment section. People watch the videos and then they send a comment. Sometimes they're very short and simple, a simple thank you, and that's appreciated. But sometimes these are longer messages and they're very interesting. I've enjoyed reading the comments. I've gotten some good suggestions for videos, and I've acted on those suggestions. I've made the videos that were suggested. I have been contacted by multiple content creators who have seen my work and invited me to look at what they are doing. Some of these people who have contacted me are creating content for learning English. These connections with other people have been very valuable to me. The next thing that comes to mind is a perspective on AI. During 2024, there were a lot of videos suggesting that AI was going to take over language learning and all this content would just be AI sourced. And I don't think that's going to happen in the near future. In the long term, perhaps, but my take on AI generated content, whether it is visual or linguistic, I find it boring. I recently watched a video by an English professor, that is a professor at a college who teaches English composition, and he lamented that he was receiving compositions that were clearly produced by AI. His remarks were very understandable. That is, submitting a paper written by AI is not fulfilling the assignment, and so that should cause the student to fail right there. And then secondarily, the AI composition on its own merits was not very good. It didn't have the human touch. It wasn't interesting. It was boring. If you look at a lot of images generated by AI, they kind of all look the same. The details can be changed, and if you put in elaborate prompts, you can get elaborate images. But for the most part, I find them rather boring. So I am optimistic about the need for content creators for language learning for the foreseeable future, because I don't think AI can do what we do. We're not perfect. We can even be boring ourselves. But I don't see language learning content creators being replaced by an AI. I think it does bear watching, and it may become a very powerful tool in language learning in the future. Another thing I learned from 2024 is to look to the future. Things are changing. We don't know what the future holds, but we can certainly explore it, enjoy it, and grow in it. But I think the future is very bright for those of us who stay focused on lifelong education. Now, lifelong education does not mean registering for classes at a school. It means taking responsibility for your own learning, gathering the information, deciding the priorities, and moving forward. So my plan going forward is to never stop learning new things. In a previous video, I talked about using a yellow pad and a ballpoint pen and listing out the ideas for the upcoming year. And I've been doing that. And there are a lot of entries on that list that have been crossed out as impractical or too expensive or not what I'm really interested in. So one of the important processes of making that list is to eliminate things that I don't want to invest my time in. Our time is valuable. We don't want to waste it on things that are unimportant. We can think about those things, but we don't have to act on them. During the making of that list, I came upon a little bit of a surprise. Something I wrote on the list, and as I reviewed the list, it never got deleted because it seemed very interesting, very attractive, and maybe worth the time. What could that be? Well, in an upcoming video, I'm going to tell you what it was that I've not been able to scratch off my list. It's an idea that may just be here to stay. If you like videos like this, be sure to click on this one next. See you soon.